good day, everyone. I'm your host, Paul Lawrence Vann, and of course, I host Wealth Academy podcast. And our mantra is this: wealth is more than just money. And as we're in this Christmas holiday season, we know that the new year is not far behind. And what we're going to talk about today with our honored guest, Askia Davis Sr., we're going to talk about how to finish the year off financially strong. And I want to welcome him right now. Askia, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great.
All
It's a
right,
beautiful day.
fantastic. We're glad to have you. And I want to just let all the viewers know this is that Askia Davis Sr. is our most interviewed guest on Wealth Academy podcast. He's worked with me earlier in the year with coaching, and then we had some other interviews that he participated in, and we're glad to have him here. And he's a real estate investment expert as well as a stock investing expert. And we're glad to have him here. Now, in his background, he has completed a doctorate degree from Columbia University, and he has been a teacher, a counselor, and administrator, and the senior assistant to three successive chancellors for the New York City Public Schools. He was superintendent of schools in Harlem and deputy regional superintendent for 140 schools, serving 99,000 students in the Bronx. So without further ado, I want to welcome Askia Davis with us, senior with us, and we are glad to have you here, Askia. And how are you doing, my friend?
Keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive. I love it. I love it.
Exactly.
I
You
love it.
know, we have to keep the faith. These are very trying times, but
Yes.
even in trying times, we have to find a way to thrive, you
Yes.
know, because when we look at the challenge, we know that there are so many people, especially my ancestors, who looked at deeper challenges. And I'm standing and I'm sitting here today because they were able to go through even deeper challenges to make it possible for me to sit here today to talk with the audience about my own experiences in the world of finance. So
Absolutely.
we're ready. We're ready for this time.
Yes,
We're
we
ready
are.
for this time.
We're prepared and ready to go. And one of the things that I want people to know is that you have just a wealth of financial experience. And we know that you've been a counselor. We know that you've been an instructor, a teacher. You have a doctor's degree, but you also master your money. And you work in that investment field for stocks and bonds, and you also work with real estate. But what we want people to take from this evening is how they can finish this year off strong financially. So if you would please share just a few tips that people can take, some strategies and some suggestions perhaps they can take with the closeout of 2020, this great year of 2021.
So, if anyone in the audience looks at Bloomberg, Financial News, or CNBC, you will notice that almost all the conversations at this time of the year is about end of the year preparation.
Yes.
What is 2022 going to look like? And what are the things that you need to do now to balance your portfolio so that you can look ahead and be prepared to take advantage of the opportunities that come in 2022? So tonight, I want to be very specific about some of the things that you can begin to do. And you don't have to be rich.
Yes.
I started this journey. I was working in the chancellor's office. I had a middle-class job, but I was taking care of two households. And I had my two daughters living with me, and they were very young, and I wanted to give them the best. And so on the weekends, I drove a yellow cab, and that is a brutal job.
Oh, it
So
is.
anytime you get in a cab, make sure you give that person a good tip, because that is one brutal job.
It
But
is.
you do what you need to do. So what I
Yeah.
did is I decided I wasn't broke in the sense that I had a great job. I was like 30 years old, and I was already in the chancellor's office at the New York City Board of Education. I already was doing some tremendous things in terms of education innovation. But New York is a very, very expensive city.
It sure is.
And then when you're paying two rents,
Yeah.
and you're taking care of two little girls, and you want the best for them, you do what you have to do. So I
Yeah.
decided, I went to a friend and I said, I'm really, I'm in deep, what can I do to get out of this hole? And he sent me to Luther Gatlin, who was the first guy in America, a black man who really started this whole thing in terms of budget counseling that has spread all throughout America. And basically, he was talking about how to get hold of, first of all those credit cards and all those loans that you have, and you can't meet. And so I went and I said, I don't have that problem. I don't have since 1975, it's been American Express. I pay it the beginning of every month.
And that's a good one to have.
I am not paying interest. I'm not paying these. Right now, the banks are getting the money that they loan you at less than 1% from the Federal Reserve. And in some cases, they are charging up to 25, 26, and 27% interest to you.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, very much.
And so, and then so you have to be mindful. So what I did is I said, I'm going to learn investment. And so that was this guy on TV. It was called Wall Street Week. Louis Rukeyser.
I watched that
show. Louis Rukeyser taught me so much. Every Friday night I sat and I absorbed. And today, that was like 1981. So this is 40 years later?
Yeah, 40 years.
And instead of looking at, MSNBC, CNBC, MSNBC and CNN and all that, and spending all my time on those channels, I look at the financial news because it's what excites me. And it gives me insight in terms of what's going on. We're talking about, we want to pass on generational wealth. That is something that we have not been able to do that well.
Yes.
And so I inherited nothing. I was in the cotton fields at 5 years old with no shoes on my feet. You see? So I didn't inherit anything. I inherited hard work. That's what I inherited. You understand?
Hey, the Bible talks about that.
So what I want to say is I started learning and I taught myself investment. And I will tell you, and then I'm going to get into the principles. One principle that I have is you got to know for yourself.
Yes.
Most Americans are, even though they don't know it, they are in the stock market, whether they know it or not. Because if you work for a company and that company has a plan, a retirement plan that you're in, it's been invested in the market.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people, I would dare say the vast majority of people don't know what accounts the company they work for is invested in.
Yeah.
So I've looked at people and I've looked at my friends and I said, okay, let's look at what your company is invested in. So you're 40 years old and they are invested in bonds. And if you look at this bond fund that they have you invested in, what has it done over the last 10 years? 2%.
Sure.
So what is the stock market doing over the last 10 years? It's more than double, more than 100%.
Absolutely.
So why do they have you in these low return funds? So, and then they have you in some that are moving, some stock funds that are moving. Right. So what you need to do is you need to sit down. So one of the first things that you need to do is you need to go in January and sit down and look at what they have you invested in. Because if they have you invested in funds that are not moving, stock funds, bond funds, then you need to really talk with them about what you need to do to move forward. So that's the first thing that you have to do at the beginning of the year. This year, the stock market has done more than double digits.
Absolutely.
Right? So I have friends who were invested in their companies and they look back and they say, Doug, I'm like doing 3%, 4%. You need to know what you are invested in. That's the first principle. Don't let people make decisions for you. You have to begin. You don't have to be an expert. I was not an expert when I started. I'm still not an expert. I'm still learning every single day. That's what expertise is about. Studying, building upon the knowledge that you have. So you have to start there. The second thing that you need to do is you need to look and say, okay, how much am I contributing to my company's fund? A lot of people, if a company tells you if you contribute 5%, they're going to match it. They're going to match it up to 3 or 4%. But they may tell you you could contribute as much as 9%. So you look and say, but if they're going to match it by up to 3%, then I'm just going to invest 3%. Right? So you invest 3%, they give you 3%. You know, you're not taking advantage of what happens when you get into the market, you stay in the market for a period of time, you get that compounding, and what you find out is that in the stock market, if you look at the S&P, which is the basic big group of stocks, the average over a 10-year period, the average over a 10-year period in terms of gains is 10%. So it takes 7.2 years to double, right? It doesn't mean that every year it's going to be 10%. Like this year is much higher than 10%. Next year may be lower. We've had some years recently that were like 23, 24%. So if you were not invested in the right vehicles, you were not getting that 23 or 24%.
Because they were not leveraging it properly.
You're not. So you got to know what's in it. You got to put as much as you can into your company, right? Because when you put, like people look and say, well, if I put in for every, if I put in $100 or $200 a month, that's coming out of my take-home pay. It's not, because remember the $200 that you're putting in pre-tax.
Correct.
So if you were to take that $200, guess what's going to happen? The government, the state government, the city government, the federal government is going to take part of that $200.
Exactly.
So what you want to do is you want to put that money away, and you want to do it as early as possible. The other thing that you need to know is that
in other
even
words,
though
what you're saying is put it in. The younger you are, the better to invest.
Oh, the younger you are, the better. And I tell you, okay, I don't want to lose my train of thought on this. The other thing is a Roth IRA. Even though you have a company plan, if you make less than $110,000, $115,000 a year, whatever the limit is going to be for 2021, you have the right to invest up to $5,500 in a Roth. So you have to look up the right amount. It may be a little bit more than that. My memory is not that great right now. But what you need to do is you need to look at the Roth and say, okay, I can put another $5,000, $6,000 in a Roth account this year, beyond what I'm putting into my company plan, and that Roth account is going to grow tax-free forever. Forever. So every year that you're under the threshold, put that money in, and you will be amazed at how that money will grow. And if you put it in a Roth account, you don't have to put it into your company. You could put it into Fidelity or Vanguard, right?
Right, exactly.
Those are the ones I recommend. I don't get any, gratuities from them or anything. Those are just the ones I've had experience with.
And we want to let people know that contact your accountant about this. In other words, they'll have to go to their accountant to get this verified. Your recommendation. Exactly.
So your accountant will tell you, the person who does your tax will tell you how much you're able to invest in a Roth account. Exactly. So what this means is, so you're young. If you're young, you're building up your Roth account. And so say you're in your 20s. So by the time you get to 40, you have a nice little bit of money in your Roth account. You can take that money out for a down payment on a house with no penalty. And when you take that money out, you take out what you invested, and it's tax-free. It's tax-free.
That's the space they want to be in.
So look into a Roth account as an area that is really critical for you. The other thing I would say is that a lot of people, what they do is they have a lot of money taken out of their paycheck because they want to get a big income tax return. Oh man, I got $8,000 back in May from my income tax. I got $9,000. Oh, I got $12,000. Guess what? That meant that you loaned the government $8,000 $10,000, $12,000 that could have been working for you.
Exactly. And the
That could have been working.
And they multiply that 100 times.
Yeah. So the government. So what I'm saying is, you know, don't believe that when you get $8,000 back or $10,000 back from your income tax that's great. It's not great, because you could have been getting that money back, getting that money in your paycheck, and since you weren't using it anyway, you could have invested that money, and it would have grown at a much faster rate than a zero rate that you're going to get back from the government.
Exactly.
Because the government is not giving you anything. Government. Now, if you owe the government and you don't pay them within a certain period of time, they're going to charge you interest. But when they hold your money, because you have your deductions are not what they should be, the government is not giving you interest on that.
Exactly.
If you do get back a big check in May or June, don't go on a cruise.
Right.
Take that money and invest it. Invest it. And learn the lesson, you know, because you could have invested it this year instead of starting to invest it next May. Correct. But that's what happens. People say, oh, I want this. And they think that's a savings account. It's not a savings account. It's just really, it's an account that you're feeding the government. Exactly. And smart people don't do that. Yeah, they really don't.
And it's the same thing with the Social Security. You know, it's a issue about timing for that too. When people have start getting the Social Security distribution at age 62 or age 67 or age 70 or 72, that also impacts how much you're going to get back.
Exactly.
The longer they wait, the more they'll get.
The longer they wait, the more they'll get. And there are a lot of different things that you have to figure. I took Social Security at 62.
Right.
Why did I take Social Security at 62?
Yeah.
Because I had retired at 57.
Exactly.
I took early retirement. And I took it not because I needed it, but I took it because I did the math, and it showed me that if I waited until I was 66 or 67, I would have got X amount when I was full retirement age. But between the ages of 62 and 67, I had gotten something like more than $100,000 from the Social Security fund I would get. And I took that $100,000 each year and I invested it at a bigger rate than when you delay your funds, the government is basing the increase that you're going to get on an annual rate of 4%. Exactly. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. In other words, they limit how much you can get, even though they're using your money. You invested all those years. Right.
So when you're 63, you know, they're going to give you 4% more. When you're 64, they're going to give you another 4% more. But I took that money that I got in 62, and I will tell you, I have more than quadrupled. That means 400 to 500% of what I took out. So So that's what you have to do. Because I invested it. I invested it in Facebook when Facebook was $17. Facebook is what, $300 and some a day.
Exactly.
Right? So it's Meta platforms now, of course. So I want to keep going on with some other ideas.
All right, that sounds great.
So the critical thing is invest, right?
That's right.
Now, when you look at your options, a lot of people say, "Well, I can't figure out what to do."
Sure.
Get yourself a subscription to Morningstar or Motley Fool and learn a little bit. Just begin to learn a little bit about investments, because when I started, I didn't have the confidence to invest in stocks, so I invested in mutual funds. And there are great mutual funds out there. Mutual funds are a basket of stocks. Yes. So you get a little bit, and they have a certain percentage that's going to be, if it's Vanguard,
Sure.
ETF, 500 ETF, which is
Uh-huh.
designed to go hand in hand with the S&P. What you're
Yes.
going to find, you're going to have a little bit of Apple, a little
So,
bit of Facebook, a little
uh-huh.
bit of
With more of a
maybe even
diversified
Tesla.
investment.
It's a diversified basket of stocks.
Uh-huh.
So, and it's designed, if the stock market goes up 10% this year, it's designed to give you 10%. And most years, it either
Uh-huh.
exceeds it or fall maybe a little below it. But it's going to be a lot higher than you putting your money in
Savings account.
a savings account, exactly. So
Yes.
that's the other thing. So I told you about the IRA. So you have the right when you are on the job to not just invest in your company fund, but you could
Uh-huh.
invest in a Roth IRA. If you're above the 110,000 limit in the Roth IRA, you can
Uh-huh.
still invest in the IRA.
Exactly.
So as much money as you have, put it there,
Yes.
because you will be amazed at how money grows. You know, this is how, we don't have the kind of money that Elon Musk has, right?
Correct. Uh-huh.
But these are the same principles he uses, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The basic thing is you buy a good stock, you hold that good stock,
Uh-huh.
you if it's continue to go up, you don't sell. If the market
Exactly.
goes down,
Uh-huh.
if the market goes down and you know it's a great company, like
Yeah.
Apple is a great company.
Oh
If you
yeah.
go back and look at Apple,
Yeah, the
even this year,
valuation. Yeah,
yeah.
valuation is high.
Now, so if you look at Apple this year, I think Apple today was like up about 172. But
Uh-huh.
if you go back and look at Apple this year, you will see at some point this year, Apple was down around 115.
Right.
So it went down from like 125 or so when they did the split down. So if a person jumped out of Apple when it went down to 115, guess
Uh-huh.
what? They've lost more than what? From 115 to 172
Uh-huh.
is, I'm trying to do the math, 45.
Uh-huh.
That's almost a 40% rise,
Exactly.
right?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
so it's just 15. I'm trying to 115
$57
and
differentiation
yeah.
from
So
start to
so
finish.
who's giving you 40% in 1 year?
Nobody.
Nobody's giving you that, right?
That's right.
So, and guess what? The other thing to do is as you study, listen. Everybody's talking now about the metaverse, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So
That's
what
the
is the
main thing.
metaverse?
Facebook.
I'm going to tell you, never invest in anything you don't understand. There are a lot
Exactly.
of people out investing in crypto now, and there
Uh-huh.
are people who are gaming the system and they're doing very well with crypto. And
Sure.
every day you're going to see somebody, oh, this person bought this with that, this person bought
Uh-huh.
that with that, and all that's very, very good. But right now, it's what the wise people say, do not put any more into crypto than you are willing to lose, because right now it's so volatile. It's
Yeah.
like going to the casino. And
Yes.
speaking of going to the casino, don't go to the casino.
Exactly. I live 5 minutes from one and I don't go.
And guess what? You don't have to go now, because everything, if you are into sports,
Yes.
every other
Sports
commercial
betting.
is about DraftKings and bet this. They even have the
Uh-huh.
whole shows which are about gambling.
Yeah.
Now, don't get sucked into that,
Yeah.
because I would tell you,
Gambling addiction.
I would tell you, they're
Yes.
not these gambling places, these sports betting groups, they're not in the business to give you money.
Right.
They're
They
in the
want to
business to make money. And there will be
exactly.
some people who will get some dollars from that,
Sure.
and there will be a lot of people,
That
but
will lose.
it's predicated on the fact that for every 100 persons who get something out of it, there's going to
Uh-huh.
be 100,000 who lose.
Right. I know
Now,
the local casino where I'm at, they make about 300,000. They generate 300,000 every quarter. Every quarter.
yeah.
And that's a low number. That's a low on the low end. Yeah.
So you have this thing with the casinos, and it's drawing a lot of people in. the other thing that I want to say is housing.
Right.
Look at your mortgage rate.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people got subprime rates when they went into their homes.
Correct.
So if you have a
2008.
rate that's above 4%, consider refinancing. If you have a rate, there are people out there with rates 12%.
Yeah.
Can you believe that, Brother Paul?
That was back in the 80s.
And so you need, or 7%, 8%. And they love their homes.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're feeding the bank.
Yes.
So you need to find a way out, because right now, 30-year mortgages, are under 4%. You could probably get one at 3.5%.
Yeah.
And
the
15 years.
They can get it at 1.5%.
Yeah. Well, if they get one of those adjustable rates that they're going to be in and out for a while. But if you look for the fixed, I recommend people, if you don't know a lot about finance, stick with fixed rates.
That's right.
Because then you know what your payment is going to be.
And it won't fluctuate.
And it won't fluctuate.
Right.
So anyway, look before New Year's Eve, do yourself a favor, look at your home mortgage, look at how much your mortgage rates are, look at your options in terms of bringing it down. Now, some people are also paying PMI, private mortgage insurance,
which is
now here's what happens.
The mortgage payment.
Right. So here's what happens. You take out a house, you bought a house 7 years ago, and you didn't put down 20%.
Right.
So they charge you PMI. And PMI could be a few $100s up to a few $1,000, $1,000 or more, depending upon
the value
the cost of your house.
Right.
So say you put down 10%, and with the closing and everything, the house is a little bit more valued, a little bit above what you pay for it. So you end up, when you close and everything, you end up with 15% equity, right? The 10% you put down, the 5% that's of the house cost that is above what you pay for.
Exactly.
And guess what? So they tell you that when you get to 20%, you can apply to have the PMI removed. Correct. You know how many Americans don't do that?
Yeah.
They 7 years later, 7 years later.
Yeah, it's really like an extra tax in many ways.
Yeah. So 7 years later, 5 years later, 4 years later, when the house is above 20%, they're still paying their PMI.
No, you shouldn't pay that.
So, because the bank is not going to call you up and say, do you want us to drop this private mortgage insurance?
They're not going to do it.
The mortgage insurance company is not, they'll take it. But
even when a person is filing their taxes each year, they ask you if you pay PMI at closing and all that. Yeah. Okay. So we're 28 minutes into it. Into our episode here. What else do you want to share with people to help them finish this year strong?
Okay, so the other thing I want to say to you is, look, there are people, I read something my friend wrote the other day. She posted it on Facebook. She says, you worked hard, you had nothing, nobody ever gave you anything. You've taken care of your kids, you prepared your kids, and now you're retired and you have the means to enjoy your retirement.
Exactly.
But guess what? You're worried about your kids and you're worried about your grandkids. Forget them. This is what she said.
Think for yourself.
I think for yourself. Now, I don't agree with that philosophy, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I guess when I was down on my luck, and when I was talking about driving that car, I wish somebody had passed something down to me.
Absolutely. I know that's right.
I wish somebody.
Some generational wealth.
I'm talking about. So what I'm saying to you is, if you have means, and there are a lot of people on this podcast with means, and they're thinking, like when I make my transition, I'm going to pass this to my son. I'm going to pass this to my daughter. I'm going to pass this to my granddaughter. I have a friend now, and I don't think he'll get bad with me for saying this, but he has a lot. He has property. He has pensions, he has
Uh-huh.
stocks, he has everything, but he's alienated from his son and his grandsons. And I tell him, I said, man, you know, and I'm telling you like I tell him, you know,
Yeah.
and this is Dr. Davis, and I'm using street language.
Sure.
I told him, I said, look, man, let me tell you something. If you make your transition and you don't have a will,
yes,
guess what's going to happen?
it's going to be up in
The
court.
state of South Carolina. You know,
Yeah.
South Carolina. You know what South Carolina think about folks, right?
Oh, yeah.
South Carolina. Remember that guy who they claim he killed his wife, his son, and all that other, and he was taking all this money and everything. The guy that was well respected. What happens in South Carolina, as all over America, there are people who will steal your wealth.
Yes.
Right? And what they will do is a judge will say, okay, Paul, good old Paul left $3 million here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to appoint my best friend's nephew, who's a lawyer, to oversee Paul's estate.
Yes. And they're going to take all that lawyer is going to take all of that money.
And the lawyer is going to make the decisions about the investment. So he can invest in his friends' funds. He can invest in Bernie Madoff fund, although Bernie Madoff is not around again. You get my point. What I'm saying to you is you don't want other people to make decisions for you and your wealth.
You need a will and a trust.
You need a will and a trust. You don't even have a living will. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to think about a will because I'm superstitious, right? And because they think that death is the end. But, you know, death is not the end, Paul.
It's the beginning.
Right? You know, death is just, we transition. You know, we are spirits.
Exactly.
We always were, we always will be, you know. And so the thing, that's just the reality. So what you do is you have to go in, you work with the lawyer, your accountant can help you find someone.
Exactly.
And they'll do a living will and trust. And one of the things I will also say is look at what you have. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's making decisions now about the artwork and other things that he wants to give away while he's still here. He's like 71, 72. And I suggested to him, also think about the finances you want to give now. Right. Because see,
donations to colleges or library, nonprofit organization.
Exactly. You could, but I say start with your kids, start with your grandkids.
Yeah.
You know, if you got a grandkid and the grandkid is 18 years old, and the grandkid is in college, and the grandkid is on doing student work study, and it's making $5,000, $6,000 towards college for that.
Exactly.
Turn around and invest in an IRA for him or her. You know, so you could put $5,000 or $6,000 into an IRA, give it to him now. It's going to be more valuable to him now because at 18, you're going to put money into an investment account. He's going to begin to think about investments, begin to learn about investments, and he's going to see those investments grow. So for my son, every year, this year, because my son is doing a 1099, I'm able to put $20,000 into an investment account for him, tax-free, to avoid taxes. You see, and it's not like I need to do that because he could do it out of his own money. But then I said to him, you put your money into these other things, you know, you're going to save towards a home, etc. But I'm going to help you build your retirement accounts. And he's 29 years old.
Yes.
So
and he'll have that compound interest working for him.
Yeah. Another example of doing this is just recently, my daughter came to me and she was talking about, she's in her 40s, she's a school teacher. You know how they pay school teachers. New York pays school teachers a lot better than other places. She does make a six-figure income as a school teacher, which we would say is not bad, but you know, this is New York City.
Exactly.
And $100,000 is like
peanuts.
Like boiled peanuts, as they say in the South, boiled peanuts.
Exactly, yeah. You know, housing and everything else absorbs that salary.
Yeah. So every year she maxes out in terms of her retirement account. I give her the same amount of money that she puts into her retirement account during the summer, but she's not working because she wants to go to Europe. She wants to see what I'm saying? So instead of her taking the money and not putting it into her retirement account so she can go to Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, etc. Hey, you want to go? You see what I'm saying? So those are great experiences. Young people need great experiences, right?
Exactly.
But we need to work with them to make sure that there's a balance. She just bought a new place in Philadelphia, and we were looking here in Brooklyn. A one bedroom here in Brooklyn, Brother Paul. They talk about 700 square feet for $950,000, man.
They're talking about that's a tiny house out in the country.
There's like you can't even put a king size bed in the bedroom. You could if you put a queen size bed, you have no space for a dresser, and they want $950,000 for that.
And they'll get it too.
Oh, trust me, that's why they have it, because there are people who are moving into New York City. They're willing to overpay, but she bought in Philadelphia where she got a more reasonable bit of real estate, more value at 25% of the cost.
Yes,
and more space.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
makes a difference.
So you have to look. So I gave you the tip about using your refunds.
That's
get into
correct.
the Roth.
Invest it.
I also want to say there's one other thing. I said, look at if you have a defined benefits, right?
Yes.
A defined benefit account is a company that actually says to you, like the New York City Public Schools, if you're a school teacher, you'll probably get a defined benefit based on your years of service, right?
Yeah.
So they say, you stay 25, 55. If you work 25 years, you can retire at 55, and you won't get your money right away, but you'll be fully vested. You'll get a full pension, right?
Exactly.
Now, what happens with a lot of people, but defined benefits, and this is true in the federal government, state governments, and city governments, a lot of people, when they start working, they don't invest in the pension system right away, right?
Right.
So what happens is by the time they wake up, 5 years has passed, and they're in their 20th year, and they've only been in the pension system for 15, right?
So it's not consistent with their years of service.
Years of service. Right. So now you got 5 years you lost. Most state government, city government, federal government, as I understand it, is going to allow you to buy back those 5 years.
So you can recapture it.
You can recapture it. So I did that. When I started out in the school system at 22 years old, I wasn't thinking about no pension. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about a pension.
Yeah.
So I missed 5 years.
Yes.
I missed 5 years. I went back, and when I was 15, I think I was 17 years in the system, I went back and I bought those 5 years. And there's a rate that you buy them back at. And the rate for those 5 years cost me $3,700. But guess what that did? That added 10% to my pension for the rest of my life each year.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So basically what that did, that $3,700 that I added, and I could give you the exact figures.
Recapture the 5 years.
I recapture it, and based on my pension, that 10%, those 10% gave me more than $10,000 a year for the rest of my life, and I've been retired 14 years. So I already got $140,000 from that $3,700.
Now, see,
that's
how you leverage things. That's really a wonderful way. And I'm pretty sure there are people viewing this and listening going to realize that they're having the same experience that you had.
Oh yeah, because what happens is in any job, if you go into the federal government and you saw this, you worked in the federal government,
Uh-huh.
right? And you know when you go in there, there's a club.
Yes.
There's a clubs that there are people. There are people who walk into an office and right away they're taken under somebody's wings,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
And when I started in the
Mentor.
school system, when I
Mhm.
started in the school system in 1972,
Uh-huh.
black men were not highly regarded. So
Right.
nobody told me and said, look, Askia, let me take you over here
Uh-huh.
and take you to the pension office so that you could register day one. But
Exactly.
guess what? White Askia Davis, my
Uh-huh.
counterpart in the
Uh-huh.
metaverse,
Uh-huh.
he was taken over. You see what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And on day one, when they signed that hiring paper, the
Sure.
same day they're over at the pension office.
So they're doing at the human resources office in their corporate world. And so for the federal government, the pension office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying to you is look at if you are in a defined program that is going to give you a pension based on your years of service and you miss contributing because you have to contribute a certain amount each year. If you
Absolutely.
miss contributing, look at your ability to buy back that time. Buy, BUYBACK, buy back that time. That
Exactly.
is really, really critical. Like I just said, $3,700 has
Uh-huh.
already turned into more than $140,000 for me in the 14 years that I've been
14 years since
retired.
you retired. That is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And
Now,
I think
if
that
I'm
right
sorry,
there is going to save people money right there.
yeah, and if I did not buy back those 5 years, I wouldn't have been able to retire when I did because I wouldn't have had enough years either. I needed
Exactly.
30 years in order to get full retirement.
Exactly. That is awesome.
I
So
would have
at
had
this,
25 years. I would have
uh-huh.
had 25 years at
So
57,
you would have been
but I
5 years
ended up with
short.
30 years.
Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah,
that makes a tremendous difference, especially when you use the compounding effect of that,
oh yeah,
which is happening today. So
yeah.
we're at about 42 minutes now. Is there anything else you want to share?
Uh, yeah,
On,
let me just look at my notes here.
uh-huh. Yeah, we want to make sure that people are
Okay,
able to take some more things
okay.
and close out the year.
Okay, so now a lot of people out there are working for Amazon,
Uh-huh.
Home Depot, Lowe's. You know,
Walmart.
these are big companies, right?
Uh-huh.
Walmart.
Uh-huh.
Now, a lot of these companies, they allow you certain positions that actually give you stock in the company, right?
Right.
So take advantage of that.
Yeah, stock
You
option.
know, stock options. You know, if you're a
Uh-huh.
manager, like my niece is a manager at Home Depot, you
Uh-huh.
know, Home Depot is not a bad stock. It does quite well for her,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So you look at the options. You sit down. You get every company is going to produce each year a
Exactly.
booklet that's going to tell you what your financial options are.
Yes.
Most people get them in the mail and they don't open it. They'll open Sports Illustrated. They'll open, you see what I'm saying? Open that book and read and understand. And if you don't understand, ask somebody in human resources what to do. I
Exactly.
talked about housing.
Yeah.
Uh, I talked about refinance. I
Uh-huh.
talked about taking your refunds and putting it into IRAs. I talked about not getting caught up in the refund trick. I
Mhm.
talked about not getting caught up in DraftKings and all those other
Yeah, the
betting
gambling
sites.
casinos. Uh-huh.
You know, and they're really are capturing young people big time
Oh,
because
yeah. It's
young
exciting
people
to them.
young people are spending a lot of times on game consoles, right?
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
so a lot of these things draw upon those game consoles, right? That whole mindset. And so now all of a sudden and there are young people who are betting on games. They're
Yeah,
gambling in those games, right?
absolutely.
And I am saying to you, they if you want to start a family, if you want to have a healthy family, if you want to have a healthy relationship with your spouse, you know, if you want to raise your kids without a lot of drama,
Yes.
you know, you have to stay away from that because it's nice, it's enticing. The other thing is I said crypto, right? Oh, final thing I'm going to say, Brother Paul, is risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
So you have to know your risk, R-I-S-K tolerance when it comes to investment. So if you're going to stay up, if you have $10,000 and you're going to buy something, or $2,000 and you're going to buy a stock, and every day you're going to get up and check on it, and at night you're going to be nervous and it's going to go up and down and you can't sleep and you're running back and forth all night, your risk tolerance is very, very low, right? Yes. So that means a person like you have to have more or less safe investments, like mutual funds. You know, so read up and study those. If you have risk tolerance and you say, okay, like I can buy a stock, but maybe I'll look at it once a week, once every 2 weeks. If it goes down,
they have to approach it from looking at it from the long term.
Right.
As opposed
now,
to
if
short.
you're looking at it from the long term, that means your risk tolerance is high. So, for instance, I give an example. I bought Ford back this year when it was like $9. I think the day was almost $20, right? So it's almost doubled, right? So I bought a substantial amount of Ford, but I did not buy Ford to see it double this year.
Correct.
I bought Ford because I'm looking at 3 years from now where Ford is going to be one of the leaders in electric vehicles, right? Yes. And why do I think Ford is going to be and I'm not recommending Ford to anyone because this is my risk tolerance, right?
Exactly.
But I think Ford is going to do well because I look, you know, Ford did the Mustang this year, electric, right?
Exactly.
The cars were sold before they even got to the showroom. They couldn't make enough.
Yes, waiting list.
The F-150 truck, they're not going to take any more. They're not even taking any more orders.
Exactly.
They can't produce enough.
High demand.
So my risk tolerance is high. Why is my risk tolerance high? Because I've been at this for 40 years, right?
And you studied it.
And I have substantial financial resources. I have substantial real estate resources. And so if I lose $5,000, $10,000 in the stock, you know, most likely I'm earning $20,000 in some other stock. So I'm not crying. You know what I'm saying? But there are some people, there are some folks, and this is so what I'm saying is go online. There are sites, and type in Motley Fool, Morningstar, type in understanding investment risk tolerance. And then they'll give you questionnaires, and you can find out and you can determine what your risk tolerance is.
Exactly.
And that's very, very important because if somebody tells you, and I just give a quick example. When my wife retired 5 years ago, we went to TIAA, and the advisor told her, look, you got to take less risk. You've done very well. You've been very aggressive. But now you're a certain age, and now you got to go into bonds, etc. This is 5 years ago. And because I had studied, we went out, you know, and I'm a very respectable person. I like to, you know, I'm not going to tell the guy he's like, you know, he doesn't know what he's talking, because he's giving you a formula. There's a formula. You're this age, this is what you should be doing, right?
Exactly.
And so I said, no, we could take bigger risks because we have this, that. So I stayed aggressive. And at 5 years, we've more than doubled my wife's portfolio from March 2016 to now. You see? But if I had gone his way, we would have gone into bonds, which we may have had, you know, much more conservative. So maybe she would have 20, 30% more money now. But right now she's got like 110% more than she had 5 years ago.
So that's net 90% gain.
Yeah, actually 110%. So
Oh, 110.
she more than double. She
Okay.
more than double what she had.
Okay.
But that's
Fantastic.
because I studied and I learned, and
Uh-huh.
we make a decision. At some point in the future, there's going to
Uh-huh.
be the stock market is going to go down, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
going to go down. They're
Yes.
talking about a 10% correction.
Right.
It may happen in January. It may happen in
Uh-huh.
February. Remember the correction that we had in 2008,
Eight.
and
Yeah.
everybody jumped out the stock market, say, "I'd never get back in there." Guess what?
The
The stock
prices were
market is
low.
going.
Yeah.
The
It's rolling.
stock market. You know, the people who stayed in.
Uh-huh.
First of all, if you jump out when you're down 45%, guess what? You're never going to see that 45% again, right?
Exactly.
So in less than 5 years, 6 years, the market had recovered all of that 45%, and had even gone up even higher, right?
Exactly.
So they missed out on all of those gains.
Sure.
So if the market goes
Again, it
down,
goes back to the risk tolerance.
it's a risk tolerance.
Yeah.
So my risk tolerance is if you're in a mutual fund and you're all right and you don't need the money like tomorrow or
Uh-huh.
next year, and you're in a mutual fund like a Vanguard or Fidelity, and
Uh-huh.
it goes down 10 or 15, 20% in the spring, you
Uh-huh.
know, if it were me, I would hang in there. And if it
Exactly.
were me, I would buy more.
Yeah.
Why would I buy more? Because I know that it's a great fund, because I look at their performance over the last 30, 40 years and I see what
Uh-huh.
they've done, right? And
Exactly.
so I buy more because if I have it up at $100, right? For
Uh-huh.
example, and it goes down to $70, I
Uh-huh.
could jump out and sell at 70,
Yes.
or I could go in and buy at 70, right? And wait
And
for
it's
it to
going
go
to go
back
back
up
up.
to 100,
Yeah.
110, 120, you see?
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean that this happens all the time that way,
Sure.
but I can do that because my risk tolerance is high, and I'm looking at a 5-year horizon, 6-year horizon, and I'm really in the business of building generational wealth.
Yeah.
And last thing I'm really going to say is
Uh-huh.
pass on your wealth
Yes.
to your kids
Yes.
and your grandkids now.
Yes.
Use it as a teachable moment. Say, I'm
Correct.
giving you this, but we have to sit down and we're going to study investments.
Yeah.
And so I'm giving you this, and we're putting it into an IRA account, or we're
Uh-huh.
putting it into your company's account, or we're putting it into a Roth account.
Exactly.
And this is what we have. And let's sit down and see what are
How it
our
goes.
options.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then, so I'm sitting down with you and I'm showing you, okay, this is what I think we should buy, but here are some things for you to study. And then I want you to come back and say, oh, Dad, I agree with you, or I disagree. Maybe I want
Uh-huh.
to buy Nike instead
Sure.
of Meta platforms, because I
Yeah.
know Nike and I understand Nike and I work for Nike, and my
Uh-huh.
son worked for Nike, right? So he wanted
Uh-huh.
to buy, and Nike is doing well.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't invest in Nike, but if he had turned around and said, look, Nike, you see,
Uh-huh.
all right, that's okay, because one of the things that they say is you invest in what you know and what you understand. But we
Exactly.
have to get our young people to understand. And if they talk about financial literacy in schools,
Sure. Uh-huh.
trust me, it only goes so far unless the young person actually has investments.
You have some
It's
experience. Mm-hmm.
real world experience,
Experience.
the
Yeah.
ups and the downs,
Uh-huh.
making decisions, not imaginary decisions, but real decisions.
Exactly.
That's what we should be teaching our young people, our
Yeah.
sons, our daughters, our grandsons, our granddaughters, our nieces, our nephews,
Uh-huh.
right? So I'll stop there.
All right. Well, I tell you, I really, really know that people who are viewing and listening, who will listen on the archive, are really going to appreciate what you had to say, because you really touched on a lot of different areas, not only for those people who have been employees, whether it's federal government, corporation, and also the youth, with talking about the generational wealth. And the generational wealth piece is the type that it will go on for years and years and hundreds of years, which is very important. So I want to thank you for being our honored guest today, Askia Davis Sr., and continue to do the great work that you do. And of course, in 2022, I'm going to bring you back and we're going to talk more about some different things. Let's see what happens after this Build Back Better plan, to see how that goes and that economic impact that it may or may not have. And so there are a lot of things that are in the balance going into 2022, but I know that you have the right balance to help people to understand the importance of leverage, the importance of investing, but more importantly, investing in yourself by learning, becoming more financially intelligent. And that's going to make the difference for families throughout the U.S. And that makes a tremendous difference. So thank you very much for being our honored guest today, my friend.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing as we close,
Sure.
to be clear on.
Okay.
When you look at your end of the year, so
Yes.
I have investments in stocks that are very aggressive, and
Sure.
I have investments in a fixed account, which is less aggressive, which
Yes.
pays me a guaranteed of 8.25% a year, which is not bad. You can't beat 8.25% a year, right?
That's very true.
So every year I look and I say, okay, if I have X amount of dollars, how much do I put into this guaranteed 8.25%, right? And how much do I put into aggressive stocks? And I balance it that way. So when I look at the economic horizon, I'll make a determination. So some years I'm more invested in the fixed because I think the economy is going to go down like 2008 with the housing bubble and all that. So I'll put more of my money in the fixed side. And then over the last several years, I put more in that side in terms of the stocks. And I go back and forth because I sit and I study. And right now, these are the decisions that investment funds are making all over the United States. Absolutely. How much are we going to put into these categories? But we know that we're going to get a certain return. How much are we going to put into these more aggressive categories? How much are we going to put into technology, high growth stocks? How much are we going to put into the energy sector? How much are we going to put into consumer goods? How much? So these are the kinds of things. I don't want to confuse anyone. You don't have to know all of this. You have to get started. And as I say to people,
pick one.
The journey of 1,000 miles begin with what? One step.
Yes.
One step.
That's all it takes.
You got to make that step. And if you don't make that step, you will be stepped upon.
Correct. In quicksand. All right, brother Askia Davis Sr., thank you so much. And that's a great point that you finished off with. And it's to tell people, it's one thing to study, just like you said with kids for financial literacy, but it's another to put it into action. And putting it into action is where we learn and we get that experience. So thank you very much. I also want to thank all the viewers and all the listeners who will listen on the archive. And this is going to end this particular episode of Wealth Academy Podcast. And then get out there on Apple Podcast and rate and review episode 169 with Askia Davis Sr. And he has provided invaluable information to you. It's a suggestion, and we always preface it by saying, go to your accountant or whoever your financial manager is to help you with these final decisions that you will make whenever you invest. That's the most important thing to do, or get your lawyer to help you as well. So thank you all very much, and I will see you on the next episode of Wealth Academy Podcast. And for my friend Askia Davis Sr., thank you so much for your contribution this evening. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and let's all have a wonderful New Year. Thank you very much.
New Year.
Yes.
All right.
All right. I'll talk to you all later, and goodbye.